Hi, Catherine Williamson. This is Gobsmacked, episode 4. Join me today with my guest, Matt Gallagher. October the 14th, 2023, Matt Gallagher went to see his consultant to be given the devastating news that he's got motor neurons disease, describing it as though a bomb went off. He's picked up a baton of people that have gone before him that are raising the profile of this disease, but he's determined to get the word out there. Gobsmackingly, the poignant moment of having to tell his kids. Please join us. It is going to be gobsmacking. Hi, Matt. Delighted to have you today. Join us on the settee. Gobsmackingly, you're my first guest that I have never met before.
There's always a first.
There is. However, my husband John, that played for Coventry Rugby, I think he was a decade before you, wasn't he?
He was indeed, yeah.
Talks so incredibly highly of you. So I have met you because he describes you as a champion of men that is loved very much by your community. I have done a bit of research, put me right, but apparently you've played 100 games for Coventry.
I did indeed, yeah.
You were a fly half.
Yeah, fly half and a bit of centre as well, yeah, and a bit of fullback. So.
And you kicked.
And I did kick, yeah.
Okay, and at that point I check out.
That's fine.
That's my research done.
Rugby
and in the 90s, you played in the 90s.
I did, yeah.
Yes.
I did, yeah.
And whilst rugby isn't entirely why we're here today, it is the backdrop to how we know each other, because my husband played for Coventry a decade before you as a fly half. And the rugby community is massively behind you at the moment,
correct,
aren't they?
Yeah,
because
so.
John attended the recent Coventry Rugby dinner and he said you spoke there and he said that room was electrified by what you had to say. So thank you for being on the Gobsmacked settee today.
No, thank you very much for asking me. It's a privilege.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go straight to the gobsmacked moment that changed the trajectory of your life, and then we'll fill in from there. So are you happy to just lead with that, Matt?
No problem. And I'll come on to it in a minute, but you've actually provided me with a prop in the room. So on October the 14th of last year at 8:45 a.m, Saturday morning, it was going back to the rugby, it was the Ireland-New Zealand quarter-final weekend for those listeners that are aligned with rugby. And I basically was diagnosed with a terminal illness, motor neurons disease. We weren't expecting it. It came as a complete shock. I'd actually fallen off a ladder and damaged my wrist and with a plate, and it was a compound fracture and dislocation of my left wrist. And what we subsequently now know is that M&D can be brought to the fore, I suppose, by trauma. So that was in June, June the 30th, I think it was. Fell off a ladder, doing some DIY at home. Within 24 hours, plate in there, back out. 2 weeks later, on a Solihull School rugby tour to South Africa with John's school. I was actually on the same flight as them. Everything was fine. Just going through rehab with my hand. I was sent for a nerve conduction test because you've got a nerve called the ulnar nerve that runs from your elbow to your thumb, and it wasn't working. And basically you can see the difference in the hands in terms of the way the left hand started to claw. So we had the nerve conduction test. We pushed for the report. We read into the report. We then got seen by a neurologist privately, which I'll come on to later on, and walked out. I say it was 8:45. I actually looked. He had a clock on the wall, and the clock on the wall said 3:30, and your clock says 7:45, so we just spotted. So it's made me laugh. But 9:15, walked out of that hospital being told that I had 2 years to live.
2 years.
Yeah.
So you went in there with no expectation?
I think my wife, she's my little researcher, and she'd read up on the report, and it said that there could be signs of what's called anterior horns disease. And I think we got it on the Wednesday, and I was coaching on the Wednesday afternoon. It was a big cup match the boys were playing in, and it's quite emotional actually watching them play, and there's stuff going on in the background, and I knew that she was really upset about it. And you can look on so many different things on the internet, and the internet's not your friend in these circumstances. And I'm very much, my glass is always half full, it's overflowing, and I look at it and I just think, no, look, that's not me, that's not us, but we'll be fine. And it was tough, really tough to then someone to sit there. I mean, even when the guy told me, I looked him in the eye and I said, well, I'll beat that, because that's what I'm about.
I'll beat it.
I'll beat it. Yeah, I'll beat your time scale, and I think I'll take it on and I'll beat it, because that's my attitude. And I don't know any other way to deal with it.
So before we began this podcast, I said, am I all right to just be hard-hitting and not do all the euphemistic bit?
Yeah, we don't dance around it.
No, we're not. So we're going to scrum in on this. Because you've put yourself up here and your life up here for the next couple of years, and however long you're granted.
More than two, Catherine.
More than two. Good
That's
correction.
it.
Good correction. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. And you have put yourself out here in every level to raise awareness of motor neurons disease and to use it in the best way possible to educate, inform and fundraise.
Yeah.
When people listen to this podcast for the gobsmacking moment, I haven't had many guests that have sat in front of a terminal diagnosis and had to find their place within that. And presumably there's no preparation for that moment when it doesn't matter what you might go into the room with. I'm assuming that when you hear it, that visceral reaction. And what was that for you?
I think you're in shock. I think I described to someone as if when we walked out, it was like a bomb had gone off. And you kind of imagine walking into a street and something's just happened and the whole world stops. And it's like a numbness. But then also I think I kind of look at it as I'm the lead of my family, so I have to be strong for everyone. And I think that's really, really important. So we actually didn't tell the kids until about 3 weeks after, because what we had to do, we had to go and get a second diagnosis, because that's what we were advised to do. And we went down to London, got that, and came back, and then you kind of and ahhing, when do you tell your kids? How do you tell your kids? And that was really tough. And I think I look back now and I don't really, apart from my left arm being weak because of falling off a ladder, I think I was diagnosed really, really quickly. And I think ultimately that then gives you time to work it out mentally, look at the various different treatments you can have, but also kind of say, right, what do we want to do? What do we want to try and achieve? And, you can sit on Google and you can watch videos and see how people progress, and you go into the M&D community and you can see how different people have moved on. And I'm not playing it down by any means, but nothing will be as tough as the night I told my kids.
That was the moment. So you said diagnosed quickly. Can we conclude you were diagnosed early as well?
Yes, sorry. So,
no, just because
that's a good
because
point.
that has the bearing on
it does. And I think that so if I hadn't fallen off the ladder, I'd have probably it's just an old rugby war wound. I'd actually pulled my tricep moving some slabs. A lot of people won't think I'm strong enough, some old rugby mates, to move slabs, but never mind. And when I just kind of put that down to just something I must have done when I played rugby. was going for physio, nothing. Fell off the ladder, that brought it on. So that raised the awareness. And when you start talking to the M&D nurses, you start talking to people in the community, so many people take from, you get what are called fasciculations, and it's muscle twitching. And so I think the muscle twitching, I think started probably early summer. But I know of some people that have had symptoms for 2 years, and then they're diagnosed, and then suddenly they're moving very, very quickly.
Moving quickly through the symptoms.
Through symptoms, yeah.
Okay, so on this occasion, a fall off a ladder was that divine moment that put you into a place of a diagnosis. It wasn't the fall off the ladder that was the underlying reason. It was trauma.
Correct.
You talked about it. So you had motor neurons disease already.
Yeah, I think motor neurons disease is it's genetic, it's environmental. These are the way it's been explained to me, and repetitive exercise. So it's interesting that the nurses say, and she said they call them the family, the community. She said you're all the same, and I'll come on to it in a minute. But we say you've now got to eat cakes, and you've got to have a high calorie diet, and this, that, and the other. But it's really difficult because you're all fit people. You're very active, and I think it's sometimes it can be difficult for the nurses because they're dealing with people who are constantly on the move. And then that, I think, will probably be my frustrating bit when I move down the line with motor neurons disease, because I am very active.
Your mobility
and stuff like that. Now, I mean, at the moment, it's challenging. Your hands start to get weaker. And so, but that's part of the journey
that you're on. So you've got time ahead of you. You've clearly found purpose out of this shocking news. And you've got your sights set on how you can bring the best and the most prominence to this. Because if we all go back, motor neurons disease, or ALS as we knew it, came to prominence when we were all tipping ice over each other's heads some years back. And I don't think people necessarily connected that ALS, which is an American terminology, with some of the people that are very much in the public eye. So Professor Stephen Hawkins was motor neurons disease, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
And we have some titans in the, people that you're around and in your community that are raising the profile. So Doddy Weir is one that I think really brought it to the fore. And of course the work with Rob Burrows and Kevin Sinfield. Yeah. And there's an overlap with Kevin because one guest that's been on the Gobsmacked 33 times is Gary McKee. And Gary did 365 marathons, rugby league player. And Kevin ran with him to raise profile for what he was doing in terms of Macmillan. Yeah. So you have tribes. So you're sitting here as a football player, recording in a studio that is historically a football environment. Yeah, yeah. But the tribes do come together, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And actually, the insidious illnesses, so the football community's got the issues with those footballs, don't they, that heading those footballs and getting dementia, and the rugby community's got all the problems that have come from concussion and very, very debilitating disorders that are coming as a result of playing physical exercise. Yeah. And you're saying motor neurons disease has within it repetitive exercise and some trauma through being a sportsman. Yeah,
it has. And I mean, just one point I want to be quite clear on in terms of with rugby. One of the first questions we asked our Caroline, who's my motor neurons disease nurse, who's amazing, was my wife asked, is there a connection with rugby? And she said there isn't at this moment in time any direct connection. And she's got 3 boys who all play minis and juniors at Bromsgrove Rugby Club. And there is probably more chance of them getting heart attack, stroke, diabetes, cancer, than getting motor neuron disease, because at any one time in the UK, there's 5,000 people with motor neurons disease. So it's not a very it's not a very well known disease. And going back to your point about the ice bucket challenge, we're all tipping, with ALS. No one knew it was anything to do with MND. And even now, when I talk to people, it's like, our phones follow us, don't they? Mm. So everything that you talk about, if you talk about a new TV, a TV comes up on your phone. So motor neurons disease is in my world now, so it's on my phone. And it's probably through my friends, it's probably on theirs now as well. But a lot of people are like, well, what's that? I don't know anything about it. And I think it's really important to raise the awareness, because the My Name's Doddy Foundation was set up, and Doddy Weir was diagnosed 7 years ago. And they've done tremendous things, amazing things up in Scotland and across the UK. They've just done the Doddy Aid and raised, I think, over £800,000. And they're very focused on finding the cure, which I think is amazing. And touch wood, it might help me one day. What we want to try and do is make sure that the kind of West Midlands is on the map. Right. Because as we were talking kind of off air, it is a postcode lottery, and there are 2/3, because one of the nurses is part-time, in the West Midlands, 2 to 3 nurses, and there's 278 patients. So what we're trying to do is trying to raise the awareness, trying to raise some money, and just try and see, can we get another Band 7 nurse, 45 to 50 grand a year? Can we do that? So you can't just go, there's £50,000, because you've got to do it going forward. So we've got a whole series of events that we're doing, and I'm just trying to play my part. The kind of warriors that are Doddy Weir, bless him, he's now passed. It feels like you're kind of picking up the baton and carrying it forward. And, they've raised so much, and it's still going on in his name. Rob Burrows is doing so much, with Kevin Sinfield with the marathons, which was incredible. We actually did, we met them at the Commonwealth Games, Perry Barr track, and we did every mile, he did an extra mile. So every marathon that he did in the 7 days, he did an extra mile with various motor neurons disease patients. So whether that was someone in just at the side of the track, or someone got pushed around the track, or some of us ran it. Not sure whether I could now, but we did the extra mile, and that was massive. And I had a number of boys that I've coached for a long time come and do that with me. So that was quite an emotional moment. And it's just trying to see if we can raise as much awareness as possible, which raises the funds, which goes into research. And who knows, with AI and all this kind of stuff, they'll find a cure one day. You just got to make sure you're around for it.
So you've picked up a baton that I'm sure, when you pick up a baton, you typically think you welcome it in your life.
Yeah.
You've been cast into that role now, haven't you?
Yeah.
So from here on, from October onwards, your life's tipped over.
Yeah.
You're now fundraising, you're now doing podcasts, you're doing everything you can.
This is my first one.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I don't want to look too perky.
No, that's good. Yeah. I'm pleased to be doing my first one.
Well done. But again, you didn't invite that in.
No,
You're a guy that, was in the rugby community, you're a family man, you've got a business life. And then suddenly, and that's gobsmacked in the truest tradition, night and day. Yeah. The next day, you've got to put your life together from this point onwards and put purpose in there and structure. Yeah. And some of those steps you've gone through around tending your children, I mean, we all felt it in the room that moment when you've got to tell the people that you love most that, parents have feet of clay, but the idea that you've got to tell your children genuinely that you're on a terminal life sentence now, aren't you? Nobody's going to want to wish that in.
See, you're right. I think you're right, but I don't look at it like that. So what I actually look at it on the basis that anyone gets a knock on the door and the police could be there. Sorry, there's been a bad accident. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of, you know, they used to use it as a phrase with the rugby where you're just passing the jersey on when you're playing for a club. You don't own that jersey. You're just holding it for a period of time and you pass it on. And probably in this world, we're all passing through, aren't we? So suddenly something's come into my world and I've got to try and do something about it and try and help people. And if I can leverage through the community, and I sat down and said to the kids, look, this could go quite big because there's this to come across the wrong way, but I know I'm a nice guy. I've got a lot of contacts and I knew that I'd get a lot of support. So we've got to try and leverage from that. And I haven't really tapped into my LinkedIn community yet. I've got 360 people on a WhatsApp group that's probably driving everyone mad because it's going ping, ping, ping. I've got people walking around. There's one guy in Solihull, Steve Hartley. I'll give him a name check there. He's just about to go for a big NEOP and he's really struggling, but he's walking 400 metres every morning because he wants to be part of a run that he can't take part of, but he's doing it. We're going to see him tomorrow. He's doing his last 400 metres of a 3K walk. So I've got all these people that are there helping and we're going, right, well, how far can we take it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And because we've helped a guy down in Bromsgrove with a mobility car. We're looking into trying to see if we can purchase a mobility car with a mobility company and get it branded, because there is to get various things done. It's just the way the world is. I mean, I live in the land and planning world, and it takes forever to get stuff done. So even just some disability stuff, people have to apply on a form and have to do this, have to do that. What we've always said as a charity, we want to move quickly. So if we've raised funds, we want to make an impact.
Get them out there.
Because the people haven't got potentially a long time. We don't know the clock's ticking.
And the form filling and all those things that when you're dealing with everything else, bureaucracy is the last thing you want to be dealing with. Yeah. I think you've alluded to it already, Matt, in terms of some of the gold in the dark, but let's move on to the second question now. What do you see as the gold in the dark of this gobsmack moment that you're now fronting into?
I think it's all been really humbling. So the amount of people that have come out and just gone, we want to help, and I think they can see what I'm trying to achieve, and ultimately, it's about trying to work together to achieve as much as we can. So if I'm trying to say, come on, follow me, let's go and make a difference. And that's what we're trying to do. And the different groups, whether it be the rugby family, my own family, just all the friends from like 30 years. I'm going up to Sheffield on the 23rd of March, and some guys I haven't seen there for 30 years. There's like 40 of us reunion. And I suppose because of my diagnosis, that's brought us all back together again. That's wonderful. Look, I didn't want it to happen the way it did, but it's great that we're all getting back together and we'll go and raise some money and we'll try and help an M&D patient in Sheffield. And so, I think I've always been a great believer that if you do good things will come your way. And I really do believe in that. And I think ultimately I'm just going to try and drive it forward as best I can, raise the awareness and raise some funds, because I can see that it's already making a difference. Yeah. And that's the important thing.
And in my other life, in terms of my sort of work in leadership, you're a leader now, whether you chose to be a leader or not, because you've got followers.
Yeah.
People are following you. They're in WhatsApp groups. They're on, the whole world that you're going to have to be, embracing in terms you talked about LinkedIn. You're a leader. You're cast into a leadership role because you've become a lighthouse or a figurehead for an illness that has roared into our consciousness. It's still with 5,000 people a year. It's still compared to some of the big 5 game type illnesses, but it's devastating in its impact. And so you're leading that now. In September last year, you had no idea where you'd be in March this year.
No.
That's how everything's turned.
Yeah.
But all these people are catching together, because what John said in that room and in the bigger world of the rugby community is people are sending love in your direction, and they're holding you up in the best way they know possible. And you're joining all that goodwill together. But you didn't ask for the gig that's getting you the adoration, the support and the encouragement, did you? You're just having to own that. So whilst you're very busy pulling it together, you've still got to be the guy that's living with that ambiguity and uncertainty.
Yeah. And look, but it comes back to what I said earlier on. I still live my life through the opportunity of, not the opportunity, that's the wrong word, but my glass is still half full. It's not half empty. And that will never change. It's tough. It is tough, and it's, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional, but I've got so much to live for.
As a personality, I can absolutely see that you're a sunshine, bouncy. You're down the Tigger, aren't you? You're a bouncy. By disposition, you're a sunshine personality. By choice, every day, you're choosing to see your glass as half full. That is a choice you're making. Because if you fell to the floor, did the dying fly and wailed for the rest of the way, you'd be forgiven for doing that. But you're choosing not to do that. Yeah,
but there was a family member of mine that I spoke to in November, wasn't very well in hospital, and he got double pneumonia, and he said, "Have you gone through the why me moment?" And I went, "Yeah, I did for 2 seconds, and it didn't do me any good whatsoever. Didn't help my family, so that's just gone, and it won't come back." That's the way I look at it.
The why me moment, I would quantify that as you had the choice to be the victim of your circumstances.
Yeah.
And you made a moment that was going to do nothing for you. It was going to be kryptonite to the man you are and the man you're going to have to be over the next few months, because there's a lot of people looking to you for guidance as to how to handle and deal with you, because you're going to set the permissions.
You are, and I think, I did we're doing a run on April the 6th, which you're all invited to, by the way. 3K run and a 3K walk, and they did a little promotional video, and the guy who's absolute legend, who's the chairman at the Seal Highlands Rugby Club, Lee Jones, he asked questions, and Lee broke his neck playing rugby, and is paralysed, and so yes, I've got a terminal illness, but I look at someone like him and I think, look at where he's taken his steps post his injury, and he was lying in a hospital bed at, I think it was at Stoke Mandeville for a long time, didn't know where he was going. And I look at that and I think, you can't sit there and feel sorry for yourself. Look at someone like him and you just go, wow, what can we achieve? And I've seen what he's achieved and I've gone, wow. And, the likes of Doddy Weir, the Rob Burrows, all those people, they kind of give you inspiration to say, right, didn't want it. That goes without saying, but I've got it. Now let's leverage off it and try and help the people that need help. And there are so many people out there. We're just being connected with a family in South Birmingham, and we're going to help them. And it's just great to be able to try to ease the burden that's been put upon them. And people will say, well, what about you and your family? The family have embraced it. And my eldest daughter is kind of running the charity. My middle one, she's going to be doing a speech at the ball, which, there's nearly 800 people there. And my lad, who kind of he's always there with me with the rugby, they're all just incredible. And I'm so fortunate that I've got a really strong wife and she's amazing. She has her little tears and her moments, but I don't know what I'd do with that.
I'm so pleased you mentioned the wife. Do you remember when Steve Redgrave got the Sports Personality of the Year award and never mentioned his wife? I think we were all there wanting to get the knife and your wife. But that's a sort of a light moment. But it's good to hear, because The supporters will be holding you up. You've now become a figurehead, but all those people around you, all those sandwiches that will need to be made, all those events that will be put on, those cakes that will be everything.
Yeah.
And you'll be providing the connection for all of that. And that's what I say about that. I think it was one of Barack Obama said it in his book about leadership. He says, "You don't choose the time chooses you." Yeah. And I think you're absolutely embodying that. So the third question, which is a world event, a moment where you can absolutely place yourself, or an event that is very much akin to that for you. What's your world experience, that moment?
I thought long and hard about this question, and I think in my lifetime, the biggest event, it was a world tragedy, was 9/11. And I remember I was travelling down the M54 after going to try and buy a housing site in Telford, of all places, and it came up on the news, and it was just like, wow. And then I was actually training that night, and it was literally, I think we went into training, but it was just, it was like the world had stopped. And just looking, and having now been back to New York, and seeing where those World Trade Centers were, just mind-boggling how that ever happened. And that was...
I can remember, I think we can all place ourselves in that time, because we were looking at the telly thinking, I was looking at the telly thinking it's an action movie, because all the scenes were so consistent with some sort of, and then you were aware that actually it was happening in real time. I don't know, about you. I don't suppose you'd want to necessarily be quantified in terms of heroic terms, because you're just finding every day a way of structuring your days the best way that you can.
Yeah.
But it's the people that ran into the building.
Well, I was just about to say that. It's the firemen that not just ran into the building. Some of them are just machines, aren't they? They went up with all that equipment to try and get to those people. And I think that it shows you how many good people there are in the supposed bad world we live in.
Yeah.
And there are, and I'm seeing it now in terms of, there was an under-13 game of two local clubs played a couple of Friday nights ago. It got called off because they had a social, and they rang me up and they'd raised 50 quid. And I was just like, oh my God, amazing that they thought about doing something. And that's the kind of the goodness of people. And as you said, going back, and we're jumping around, but the 9/11, those firefighters, they didn't have a choice. That was their job. And you got all the people running one way and they're going the other. It's incredible.
But even though they were paid to do it, I think they could have still exercised a choice, couldn't they, of saying, well, I know what I signed up to and I know what I've trained for, but now you've confronted me with the reality of that building, I'm actually heading in the other direction. And that's when you talk about character.
Yeah.
And that's why today, I know with John, so excited, my husband, to have you here, is because of your character and the man that you are, the man you were before your diagnosis, the guy that you are now. This is a test of character.
Yeah, it is. But I think I've always, I'm not going to drop the half full line again, but it's, if someone puts a hurdle in your way, you kick it over, or you jump over it, or you find a way around it, and that's the way you have to go through life. And hopefully that'll give inspiration for my kids, and they'll go, excuse me, how did Dad deal with it? Or how is Dad dealing with it? Sorry. And that's the message that I want to get across to them. And if that's leading from the front, and okay, I'll lead, I'll do it.
So when we agreed to do this today, I really wanted it to be the best platform for you.
Yeah.
The call to action for people, if you were to say, in this world event that's unfolding in your life.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to ask is, because we dealt with grief, and people, a friend of mine lost her son when he was in his 20s, and how people deal with people in a situation where grief, or difficult news. So from the time that you've been in with your diagnosis and you're meeting and talking to people, what's your advice as to how people meet and greet you? What would you want them to do?
It's again, very good question, Catherine. I think don't tread on eggshells. What I tend to do is if I bump into someone, they look at you and they're a little bit, do you want to talk about it? And I bring it up straight away. You've heard about my diagnosis. Let's get it out there and we'll move on. And if they want to talk to me about the charity, that's great. If they want to talk to me about Birmingham City and nearly in relegation, I might not want to talk to them about that. But, I'm very open about wanting to talk about it because I think I've been given a platform where I can raise awareness. And so hiding away or ducking the question, that's not me.
Okay. And I think part of what I think I'd hope for this podcast and bringing people's gobsmacked moments and people putting themselves other people potentially to be voyeuristically picking over their lives.
Yes.
Because you sat there today, we've been in and out of tears. You've been in and out of times. You've made yourself incredibly vulnerable by agreeing to do this. But part of that is now you're casting that part. But it's also helping people to understand when somebody is going through something that they themselves couldn't comprehend how they deal with it, normalising it. Because there's the life you've got left, you're going to live it. And you want the people around you to talk about the footy, even if it's not the best result in the world, And it's almost helping you set the permissions, don't you, Matt?
Yeah.
About how you want people to deal with you.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I'll talk about anything, literally. And I have put myself, when we did the event at Coventry, I chose to speak because I thought it was important. I thought it gives a greater impact. I chose to ask my daughter to put it out on the social media channels. I chose to speak to the Sills because I'm just carrying this baton, as I said, and we've just got to. Someone somewhere has got to find a cure for this disease, and the way we're going to do it is by raising awareness and raising funds. And as I said, that baton's been passed to me. I've got to carry it.
It's just a bit of a segue away, but when I was at university, I ended up in a leprosy colony.
Okay.
Part of my I went to Malaysia and I was in a leprosy colony. And part of the reason why there was so little research on leprosy is because it was so blooming unfashionable. People ended up in leprosy colonies because literally the one I was in, the train didn't even stop. They were booted out the train to go up what was called the Hill of No Hope, and they dropped into this valley and they knew they'd never come out again because their families would never have them back. So part of the stigma of leprosy was that it was unfashionable, nobody wanted to talk about it, it got no funding. And the fact that there's only, I think it's 3 spined armadillos, the only other thing than the human beings that you can do the drug research on. What's happened now with motor neurons diseases, it's absolutely a very publicly known and understood disease. Yet what you're doing is making sure that down the line, you keep it in the headlines, you do what you're doing so that the research is there for a cure. And you're very clearly focused on that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because when anything gets cast into the shadows, you're putting light on a difficult subject, but you're doing that so people have a chance that when they're sat in a room like you were last October, there's more options available to them.
Yeah, and I think it's about finding the cure, and some of the big charities are doing an amazing job on that. But what I'm very focused, so there's 5 key centres. So there's 2 in London, 1 in Oxford, 1 in Sheffield, and 1 in Edinburgh. And obviously we know all the amazing work that Doddie's Foundation has done up in Scotland and made a massive impact with nurses and stuff like that. And when I sit down and talk to the M&D nurses in Birmingham, it's kind of, I thought, right, there's a bit of a challenge here. Let me see if I can put Birmingham on the map. People will go, wow, that's a big challenge, but let's take it on.
It strikes me that you're a guy that likes a challenge. Ones you choose and ones that have been
but I think I'm more about finding solutions than problems. So I've got
a glass half full, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a problem. I'm going to do whatever I can to try and find a solution. And if that solution is for me, brilliant. But if it's not for me, but it helps someone else, then...
So as we pull your first podcast together to the end and to a conclusion, and the final question is that I asked you for a book, a film, a quote, or something that has stood out to you. What would you like to share with us today?
I thought I've read a book over Christmas called Very Much Alive, and it was about a guy with MND and some of the scrapes he got himself into and the fun he had along the way, and I can see a lot of parallels. And when I meet people from the MND community, they're all so incredibly positive, and it's not why me, woe is me, oh, it's happened to my family. They're all like, let's try and do something. And I saw that at the run. And as I've kind of gone along the journey, I've met different people, and I've just gone, wow, you're so positive. And they look at me and go, you're positive. And we're like, we're all positive. This is brilliant. But I was looking, and there was one that I remember someone said it to me. Life's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. So, tough times ahead. We've spoken about the tough times that have gone, and I don't think it'll get tougher than that. Physically, people will go, God, you're mad. You don't know what's going to happen in your journey. It won't beat that. So, actually, we're going to raise awareness. We're going to hopefully raise a shed load of money, and we can have a good time doing it.
Being Very Much Alive.
Yeah, great book. Great book. It's definitely worth a read, and some of the scrapes the guy got up to, and probably some of the scrapes that I wouldn't tell you on air that I've got up to in the past. So many similarities, and it was a really, really good read. And the guy's done a hell of a lot.
So I am incredibly grateful to you. John had a vision that you'd be a fantastic guest. I picked up the phone. You have been nothing other than supportive and receptive. I didn't know you before today, and I will carry you in my heart as other people will carry you in their heart. And I just, in every bit of your endeavour, may there be wind beneath your wings. But you're a channel for love, Matt. And thank you for today.
No, thank you for asking me all the questions and being a fantastic host. I've really enjoyed myself. It's been good.
Thank you.
Thank you.